a federal judge blocking Trump deportation flights, this time flights to Libya and Saudi Arabia. New ruling coming just hours after CNN reported that the White House was actually planning to use a large U.S. military plane to deport a group of undocumented immigrants to Libya. That's a serious flight. But Libya, for its part, tells CNN there have not been talks with the Trump administration about accepting migrants, and one official says they do not want the migrants brought to their country. Kristen Holmes is live from the White House. Kristen, I mean, it's now not just El Salvador, right? You're talking countries like Libya, Saudi Arabia. What can you tell us about Trump's plans for these new deportation flights?
Well, look, there's still a lot of details that we are trying to get answers from the administration on. I mean, as you mentioned, we did report this morning that the administration was planning on moving forward with this idea of taking a group of undocumented migrants and bringing them to Libya. There were a lot of questions that went unanswered. One, when was this flight leaving? Was this a one-time flight, or was this now a plan that they were going to bring multiple flights, multiple groups of migrants to Libya, to Saudi Arabia? And we still don't have the answer to this. So what we do know is that this immigration advocacy group filed this emergency petition to stop these flights from happening, saying that it was going to go against all of their rights. And this judge ruled in their favor, saying they would actually go against a directive he previously gave, which was that these people who were being deported, if they were going to a country that was other than their home country, they had to be able to have notice, and they also had to be able to oppose this before they were actually put on a plane. But I do want to note one thing here, Aaron. We still don't know if this plane took off. And from this petition, it said that if there were flights that already had gone over to Libya by the time that this was ruled on, that those migrants be brought back. But we don't know right now the current state of this.
And Priscilla, the Trump administration is planning to go ahead with its plans to deport undocumented immigrants to Libya, of all places. And we're not talking about undocumented immigrants from Libya. We're talking about from other places. You were the first to report on CNS, and you have some new reporting on how advocacy groups plan to fight sending these individuals, these undocumented immigrants, to Libya.
Yeah, just in the last few hours, there has been a lot of filings in the court. So immigrant advocacy groups immediately went to the court and said, hey, look what is happening in Texas. It seems as though there's a flight going to Libya. And our clients have not been notified in a written way, as you, federal judge, said needed to happen, nor have they been given the ability to contest their removal to Libya. Now, just moments ago, the federal judge weighed in and clarified to the administration, you have to provide written notice. There has to be some time to contest this. And if you don't do that, then it appears that you might be violating this order. So this is still playing out in real time. But there is a lot of concern tonight about these migrants in Texas and whether or not they will be sent to Libya.
All right, Priscilla Alvarez, thanks so much. Let's bring in Texas Democratic Congressman Joaquin Castro. He represents the district west of San Antonio. He serves on the House Intelligence Committee. Congressman, good to see you. So you just signed on to a letter alongside dozens of Democrats asking for a Department of Homeland Security investigation into the conditions at migrant detention facilities. The Bulwark was first to report this and says the letter, quote, represents the latest example of a bank shot strategy that the party is taking, the Democratic Party, when it comes to attacking Trump's immigration record, avoiding the larger concept of deportation and instead focusing on the brutality and harshness of Trump's methods, unquote. Is that an accurate description, you think?
Well, absolutely. If you look at what's going on, Jake, first of all, they're picking up people off the street. They're forcing mothers to choose whether to keep kids with them, including a few kids that have had cancer, giving them less than 24 hours sometimes to make that decision. And at this specific facility in Louisiana, people are not able to talk to their lawyers oftentimes. They're not getting the medical treatment they need, and there are huge overcrowding issues. And so for all those reasons, we were asking for an investigation.
U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio recently said that the Trump administration wants to send undocumented immigrants as far away as possible so they can't come back. What do you make of this agreement with Libya that Priscilla was just talking about?
First of all, it's just bizarre, but it's also very dangerous for these people. Remember, Donald Trump, during his campaign, talked about deporting criminals. And now he's going after kids with cancer, also people that have been here a long time, that have been paying taxes, taking care of their families, some of them that have been running businesses even. And now he's talking about sending these people to Libya. That's why you've seen his numbers on immigration fall, because Americans understand cruelty and gratuitous cruelty when they see it.
His numbers have fallen, but the Democratic Party's numbers have not gone up as a reaction. Why do you think your party is still so unpopular, and especially on this issue of immigration? President Trump remains polling okay, not as well as he was before on this issue. It's still one of his better issues, though.
Well, I mean, look, when you lose as a political party, I think when you lose the presidency, when you lose the Senate, when you lose the House, there is obviously an issue with message and what you're communicating to the American people. And I think that the Democratic Party obviously has to talk to the American people about what we stand for, the fact that we're trying to build opportunity in this country for everyone. But at the same time, that doesn't absolve Donald Trump of all of his incredible failures and the damage that he's bringing upon the country right now.
But wasn't one of the failures of the Biden presidency, one of the, at least according to the American people, according to polling, what was described as an open border policy, the fact that he wasn't particularly enforcing of the border, and that his policies when it came to immigration seemed all over the map? Isn't one of the reasons you're out of power because the American people ultimately judged that they wanted a more conservative immigration policy?
Well, there's no doubt that the border, that there were more folks over the last several years that were coming up to the U.S.-Mexico border, that oftentimes the Biden administration was trying to follow the law, because people have a right, whether it's the United States or another country, people have the right to apply for asylum, and so they were trying to follow the law. But also, Jake, as you know, the border and immigration in this country, especially in places like Texas, my home state, those are some of the thorniest issues in American politics. And the Republican Party spent hundreds of millions of dollars trying to convince Americans that every undocumented immigrant, even kids with cancer, are potential serial killers. They spent hundreds of millions of dollars trying to do that. And so, of course, it's a thorny issue.
But U.S. Customs and Border Protection data shows, regardless of how thorny this issue is, encounters on the U.S.-Mexico border have plummeted since President Trump took office. Even if you don't agree with the administration methods, don't you think that's a good thing, fewer illegal border crossings?
No, look, they have, and during the Biden administration, particularly the latter part of the Biden administration, and continuing during the Trump administration, the United States has worked with Mexico and other partner nations to stem that tide of folks who are applying for asylum. I will say this, there is an effect of out of sight, out of mind, but there is a lot of still economic oppression, a lot of danger in those countries. And at some point, unless you really try to solve those things and work with those countries on solving those things, this is always going to be a challenge for the United States.
Democrat from Texas, Congressman Joaquin Castro, thanks so much. Good to have you back on the show.
Good to be with you.